think about that, there's obviously that means more data is going to be generated, right? In some ways, if we want to put it down in a kind of a binary computer engineering way, right? More data is going to be generated. So maybe you can speak a little bit more about how RWE fits into regulatory and payer decision making right now, and maybe even into the future, the one that you kind of you're painting, where you're actually gathering more information about the overall true holistic person as opposed to just the biomedical component.
Sure. I think we could have a whole session, a 2-hour session just on this question, because it's a really big question.
Great. We'll book you for another 2 hours.
Okay, perfect. So some people might, say, well, my God, he didn't get that right, or he's missing out so many important pieces. And this is my disclaimer. So this is going to be a really truncated, abbreviated, simplistic approach to your what is, I think, a very complicated question. The first thing I'll start with is, what is real world evidence? And the audience, I know you've had other podcasts, and there's a lot of information out there as what is real world evidence. And let's acknowledge that it's really new packaging. It's a sexy title for something that's been around for a very long time, which is observational data and observational research. And there's a variety of other things that have now bundled under real world evidence. And people say, well, is my iWatch data, does that count in my steps and my shopping habits and my perusing on Instagram and socials? Does that all count? It counts, but you can see how the spectrum can go from really specific, researcher-led real-world evidence and data to iWatch steps. Okay, so that's a huge continuum, and we're not talking about all of that data, right? So we're talking about there's very specific data that is necessary for regulatory and HTA decision making. So let's fast forward to that. Let's remove the stuff that is, I don't want to say is anecdotal, but it's not what we're specifically talking about. The second thing is, how has the landscape changed? And I've alluded to it a couple of times. And historically, some of the barriers to gathering of good real world data has been general acceptance as to what am I actually capturing? So if Tom captures it one way and Dick captures it another way and Harry captures it another way and Sally a fourth way, all of a sudden they all said, hey, I got real world data, but it's all different. Okay, can you pool it? Maybe not. Can you compare it? Probably not. And all of a sudden you have great pockets of data that are unusable for the means of answering broad questions. Okay, so that's a problem. Now, what has changed over time is general consensus and guiding principles and an international drive to at least acknowledge, different types of real world data. How should it be captured? What are some norms? Here are some templates. Here are some tools. So that has just generally elevated the game of real world data and real world evidence around the world. Another thing that has happened is technology has improved. So back in the day, if you wanted to house all this patient data, you're going to need a pretty big server. And it's like that analogy of like the rocket launch, the first rocket launch to the moon versus we have more power in a calculator today than what they had on a whole floor of NASA, right? So same thing has happened, a lot less dramatic, but servers and the cost to run servers and all that kind of stuff versus now you can pop into Costco and get like a 4 terabyte drive for $200, or you can get Amazon Cloud Space or Google. So it's cheap. So the ability to hold data, the softwares available to capture patient data have all improved exponentially and are much more cost effective. So now a network of 5 doctors can capture the same type of data that would be captured, that would have 10 years ago been a huge multi-million-dollar endeavor you can now do on a shoestring budget on the corner of your desk. So that has been fantastic. The last, I think, a very important piece is our understanding, our knowledge, and acceptance of real-world evidence has improved considerably. So payers, those that are making decisions, understand what real-world data is, what real-world evidence is, and that is in a large part due to things like this podcast and symposiums and articles and presentations where people are talking about it, and it's now become mainstream. This isn't a fringe, weird activity. This is standard business. And so those things put together have really elevated the game and use of real-world evidence.